Have you ever wondered why the most insightful minds are often the loneliest, the most misunderstood, even shunned by the very society they wish to elevate? In a world where the crowd worships noise, what becomes of those who speak in silence? Today, we uncover why society turns its back on the truly intelligent and what this means for you. The structure of society is not built upon the genius of the few, but on the collective will of the many. Civilization, in its outward appearance, often proclaims its allegiance to reason, intellect, and enlightenment. Yet beneath this polished surface lies a darker, more primitive truth, that society is not ruled by those who understand, but by those who conform. It is the average mind, the conventional thinker, that sets the tone of public life. The norms, the customs, the celebrated values, these are not the fruits of deep contemplation, but the byproducts of repetition, familiarity, and emotional reassurance. Society craves stability over depth, comfort over truth. What is unfamiliar becomes dangerous. What challenges the structure must be neutralized. In this landscape, the truly intelligent individual is not a leader, but an anomaly. His thoughts do not echo the majority's sentiments. He does not believe what others believe merely because they believe it. He seeks the origin of things. He is suspicious of the obvious. While others swim comfortably in the current, he asks where the river flows, and at what cost. This makes him a threat. The majority does not engage in self-examination. It prefers to move as one, to think as one, to feel as one. The moment a person steps outside this stream of collective sentiment, he exposes the unconscious mechanisms by which the herd sustains itself. And this exposure, even when done silently, is seen as a form of rebellion. The intelligent do not need to scream. Their mere presence is enough to disturb the illusion of consensus. Herein lies the tyranny. The crowd is not satisfied with ignoring the intelligent. It must reduce them. It must silence their difference, not because it is wrong, but because it reveals something uncomfortable: the shallowness of collective judgment. When a thinker dares to speak a truth that is not popular, he does not receive a rational rebuttal. He receives mockery, exile, or worse, pity. Not because his insight is invalid, but because it does not bend to the will of the collective. The democratic spirit, when corrupted, demands equality not only in rights but in thought. To be superior in intellect is treated not as a gift, as an insult to the shared mediocrity that society protects at all costs. What often goes unnoticed is that the majority's authority is not born of understanding, but of numbers. If 1,000 men declare the sky to be green, and one says it is blue, the one will not be listened to, even if he alone sees clearly. The volume of voices is mistaken for the soundness of reasoning. Truth is put to a vote, and the votes are cast by those who have never questioned anything beyond their own desires and distractions. This phenomenon is not limited to the uneducated or the blatantly ignorant. Even the cultured, the enlightened classes are not immune. They merely express their conformity with greater sophistication. They cite respected sources, uphold accepted theories, and champion fashionable ideologies, all while scorning the few who question the foundation of those very beliefs. Intelligence that dares to go deeper, that refuses to stop at what is currently acceptable, becomes a silent indictment of their comfort. And so they too join the chorus of rejection, cloaking their fear of intellectual isolation in the robes of social responsibility and academic consensus. There is no genuine place in the public square for the thinker who does not flatter the crowd. If he is not entertaining, he must at least be agreeable. If he is neither, he becomes invisible, or worse, infamous. It is not the clarity of his vision that offends, but the fact that he sees what others refuse to confront. He asks the questions that unearth buried lies. He tears down the monuments built by generations of complacency. The crowd cannot tolerate this, and so it does what it must. It rejects him, not because it is wise, but because it is many. To be truly intelligent is to see beyond appearances, beyond the obvious arrangements of the world, and into the essence of things. But this rare capacity to perceive what others overlook is not a source of community. It is a sentence of isolation. The more profound the mind, the more foreign it becomes to those around it. While most people operate within the familiar, the intelligent individual dwells in a realm of silent observation and subtle distinctions that cannot easily be conveyed or understood. This divergence is not due to arrogance, nor is it born of a conscious desire to be different. Rather, it is the inevitable result of a mind that refuses to be lulled by the rhythms of popular sentiment. The intelligent are not simply more informed, they process the world in a manner fundamentally distinct from the rest. They are disturbed by contradictions that others dismiss. They notice patterns in the chaos that others fail to recognize. They hear the dissonance behind harmonious facades and question the stories that comfort the masses. Because of this, they speak in a language that is often untranslatable, not in words alone, but in thought. Their metaphors are not understood. Their conclusions seem strange, even threatening. When they speak, their insights are mistaken for abstraction, their clarity for coldness, and their critiques for contempt. The average mind, shaped by conformity and the pursuit of ease, perceives these differences not as wisdom, but as deviance. The truly intelligent are rarely celebrated in their time because their truth is too far ahead of collective awareness. They speak of dangers yet unseen, illusions still beloved, hypocrisies too dear to be relinquished. They do not appeal to comfort. They do not flatter ignorance. Instead, they illuminate it, and illumination is painful for those who have lived too long in the dark. The ordinary mind wants reassurance. It seeks confirmation that the world is as it appears, that its values are sound, that its life is meaningful. The intelligent, however, cannot provide this reassurance. They see the contradictions in moral codes, the self-interest beneath virtues, the animal instinct dressed as civilization. They cannot pretend. They cannot lie convincingly, even when silence would serve them better. Their nature is to unearth and examine, even at the cost of belonging. This creates an unbridgeable gap between them and society. What they attempt to offer as insight is perceived as offense. What they mean as depth is interpreted as complexity for its own sake. And what they present as a mirror becomes a weapon in the eyes of the crowd. The distance grows, conversation becomes difficult, intimacy becomes rare, friendships become fragile. In this condition, misunderstanding is not an event, it is a way of life. The intelligent walk through the world like exiles in their own homeland, surrounded not by enemies, but by well-meaning strangers who do not know how to understand them. Every attempt at connection is strained by translation. Their humor is missed, their seriousness is misread, their silence is filled in by assumptions that distort their character. To be intelligent is to possess a vision that must often remain unspoken, for when spoken, it either offends or confuses. The thinker learns, not from bitterness but from experience, that not everything can be shared. There are insights so piercing, so far removed from what others are prepared to see, that voicing them only increases the distance. So he withdraws. He turns inward. He writes what he cannot say. He speaks to time rather than to men. Yet even in this withdrawal, there is not peace, but a quiet ache. For the intelligent do not choose solitude out of contempt for others, because others cannot meet them where they are. The isolation is not an affectation. It is a condition forced upon them by the limits of communication and the reluctance of the world to listen without defense. The world pretends to celebrate intelligence, but what it actually rewards is conformity disguised as cleverness. Society decorates the agreeable, the charming, the obedient minds who play the game well and speak with polish what the crowd already believes in secret. The truly intelligent, the ones who strip away illusions and confront the truths most dare not name, do not inspire admiration. They provoke envy. And this envy, hidden beneath smiles and courtesies, manifests as rejection, hostility, or silence. The presence of a truly intelligent person unsettles others because it serves as a living judgment. Without speaking, without intending to condemn, the intelligent individual embodies a contrast that others instinctively perceive. His very way of being, his choices, his clarity, challenge the assumptions of the people around him. While others are content to pursue status, novelty, or pleasure, the intelligent one seeks understanding, coherence, and meaning. This difference is felt as a threat, not because it is aggressive, but because it cannot be easily dismissed. Envy is not an emotion we readily admit to, yet it governs much of social life. It disguises itself as disapproval, sarcasm, or moral critique. When a person with rare insight or talent appears, those who feel inferior do not ask how they might learn from him. Instead, they look for flaws to diminish his stature. They question his motives, ridicule his seriousness, or accuse him of arrogance. Anything that brings him back down to size is welcomed. not because he has done wrong, but because he has dared to rise too high in a world that punishes deviation. What makes this envy especially corrosive is that it is often unconscious. The crowd does not say, "We envy this man because he sees what we do not." Instead, they believe they are right to distrust him. They manufacture reasons to discredit his character. They call him cold, elitist, out of touch. His insights are dismissed not on logical grounds, through social maneuvering. He is denied access to influence, not because he lacks merit, but because his presence unsettles the equilibrium that ignorance requires to sustain itself. This is why the intelligent rarely rise to positions of true authority. Their excellence is not rewarded with trust, but with suspicion. The more they display independence of thought, the less society is willing to allow them space to shape its values. Even institutions that claim to value knowledge, academies, governments, cultural circles, often serve as gatekeepers of mediocrity. They favor those who conform just enough to be palatable, while discouraging those who challenge the foundations upon which the institution rests. Admiration requires humility, and humility is a rare trait in those who define themselves by their place within the collective. Most people seek validation from others who mirror their own values. When they encounter someone who sees beyond these values, who questions their deepest convictions, they do not feel gratitude, they feel exposed. The intelligent do not merely introduce new ideas, they unsettle the false coherence that the crowd depends on for psychological comfort. This is why the intelligent must often disguise themselves to survive. They learn the art of speaking in half-truths, of cloaking their insights in humor or ambiguity. They offer fragments rather than full truths, not out of cowardice, but because the full measure of their thought would provoke not understanding but resentment. The deeper their clarity, the more they must temper it with diplomacy, lest it be perceived as an affront to the self-worth of others. Even in relationships that appear close, this dynamic persists. The intelligent often find themselves in the role of listener, not because they lack things to say, but because they sense that speaking freely would only create distance. Those around them may sense their depth, but cannot access it. And so the bond remains shallow, maintained by shared surface experiences rather than true communion of mind. The envy may not be spoken, but it lingers, shaping the dynamic like an invisible force. The tragedy is not merely that the intelligent are envied. It is that they are rarely known. The world judges them not by who they are, but by how uncomfortable they make others feel. In a culture ruled by appearances and insecurities, there is little space for those who offer insight instead of reassurance. There exists a peculiar irony in the life of the truly intelligent. The more abundant their inner world, the more barren their outer connections become. Rich in thought, in reflection, in quiet comprehension of life's strange and often tragic harmonies, they walk alone. The very gifts that elevate them above the common rhythms of society isolate them from the people around them. The mind, when it begins to perceive beyond the veil, finds itself dwelling in a dimension inaccessible to most. A realm of ideas, questions, contradictions, and revelations that have no echo in the conversations of the everyday. This loneliness is not a sentimental yearning for mere company. It is the deep solitude of the misunderstood, of one who sees too much and finds no one with whom to share it. While others are content with distraction, small talk, and the exchange of fashionable opinions, the intelligent are tormented by a ceaseless need to understand, to make sense of the world and their place in it. They are driven not by ambition or desire for approval, but by a haunting curiosity that strips life of its comforting illusions and demands that they stand naked before truth. But truth, as they discover, is a solitary companion. It offers no comfort, no applause. It does not smooth the path to friendship or belonging. On the contrary, it often severs the ties that connect them to others. For most people do not wish to confront the truth. They seek instead reassurance, shared myths, and the warmth of mutual delusion. And when someone refuses to partake in this unspoken agreement, when someone questions the very premises upon which their joys and values are built, he is not welcomed. He is avoided. The intelligent, therefore, are forced into a strange kind of exile, not by decree, but by the gradual erosion of meaningful contact. They find themselves surrounded by people, yet rarely touched by true intimacy. Their friendships often remain superficial, limited by the inability of others to meet them in the depths. Their conversations remain polite, detached, and emotionally safe. Rarely do they encounter another soul who can walk with them into the cavernous spaces of thought where most are too frightened to trade. This loneliness becomes not merely circumstantial, but existential. For the intelligent do not only feel disconnected from others, they begin to feel alienated from the world itself. Its values appear upside down. Its idols are hollow. Its ambitions seem absurd. While others chase after status or security, the intelligent wrestle with the futility of such pursuits. They see death in the midst of life, deception in the heart of virtue, and emptiness where others find meaning. And yet, they must live among those who cannot see what they see, who cannot feel what they feel. There is, in this condition, a quiet despair. It is not the cry of the victim or the complaint of the rejected. It is the calm, heavy awareness that to be awake in a world that dreams is to be perpetually alone. One may attempt to bridge the gap, through writing, through art, through rare moments of honest exchange. But the bridge always feels fragile, temporary. The gap remains. And over time, the intelligent grow silent, not out of contempt, but out of acceptance. They realize that most people do not want to know, do not want to be disturbed, and above all, do not want to feel inferior in the presence of someone who speaks a different language of the soul. Even love becomes complicated under these conditions. The intelligent are not incapable of love. On the contrary, their sensitivity makes them capable of the deepest forms of it. But their standards, shaped by inner richness, become a barrier. They long for connection not of the flesh, but of the mind and spirit. They seek someone who can not only walk beside them, but see with the same clarity. And such souls are rare. Rarer still is the mutual recognition required to bring them together. Thus, love too often becomes longing, beautiful, noble, unfulfilled. In the end, the truly intelligent do not withdraw from society because they despise it, but because they have nowhere within it to fully belong. The world entertains, consumes, and forgets. They observe, reflect, and remember. And so, while others lose themselves in the noise, the intelligent find themselves in the silence, carrying within them a treasury of thoughts, untouched, unread, and unrevealed. Society, in its loud celebration of progress and intelligence, rarely makes room for the truly intelligent. It rewards those who conform, who entertain, who polish their speech to mirror collective ideals, while quietly discarding the ones who see too much, who think too deeply, and who speak what others dare not confront. The thinker is not rejected because he is wrong, because he refuses to disguise his clarity in the garments of convenience. His mind, too rich for common consumption, becomes a burden in a world addicted to comfort and illusion. He is misunderstood, not because his words are obscure, because his thoughts pierce the surface. He is envied, not because he seeks admiration, but because his presence quietly reveals the vanity of the crowd. And he is alone, not by choice, but by necessity. For there are few who can walk beside someone who lives in permanent tension with the world's delusions. Yet despite rejection, misunderstanding, and loneliness, the intelligent continue to think. They write, they observe, not for praise, but because their nature demands it. The world may not see them, but they see the world. And in that act of solitary vision, they preserve what society too often forgets: the fragile, flickering light of genuine understanding in an age of endless distraction.